Welcome back to another live. Today, we're going to be talking about how to attract, delight, and engage customers. And on today's show, I'm really excited to be joined by Dave Moravec. Dave is the author of a new book, Echoes Across the Tracks. He's also an entrepreneur, and he's been focusing on leadership in the sales space for quite a while. And he's also local here in Cincinnati. He's the president of our Colerain Chamber of Commerce, which is right around the corner for me. And then Dave, I was thinking, man, we should have probably just met up somewhere, done this in person, because normally I'm interviewing people that are in other places, but you're right around the corner from me.
Technology allows either way to happen.
Yeah, so super excited to talk about this with you today. And actually, there's this local event that we're going to meet in person for the first time next week. So really looking forward to seeing you there and hearing more about this topic. But what would you say is the baseline or what's important when you want to attract, delight, and engage customers?
Yeah, as I talk about the flywheel concept, you attract businesses or clients that are a fit for your organization. So many salespeople or marketers, they're going after everybody. And the important part of attracting is attracting people that fit your product or your service or your marketplace first and foremost. Because if you spend your energy going after those that don't fit, then you're wasting time and energy and effort. But once they do get into your process, into your they bought from you a single time, you want to engage them in some way. And that's why I think apps today are have been very popular in many of the chains and large national franchises, because you're now engaged, you're getting points, you're being involved in seeing their advertising, their specials, etc. And once you've engaged them, if you've in fact now delivered on that promise that the product, the solution, even in a B2B or a B2C environment, you're so delighted that you're going to tell others. You're going to attract people that weren't probably in the line of sight of that business, and that continuation happens. And now more people are engaged, and more people are delighted, and they tell others, and it just it exponentially changes your business.
Yeah, it's interesting because this kind of ties into some of the things that I talk about, because having been in the B2B marketing and B2B sales space for a little while now, I found that once companies hit a certain size, they want to try to scale up. And then all of a sudden they take all of these principles around marketing and sales, around building relationships and then delighting your customers, creating an amazing customer experience. And they kind of go, well, those are the things we did to get here, but now we want to scale. And they end up throwing all those things out the window, and they pursue very transactional means of finding customers. And, can you find customers by auto dialing 100 people at a time and hanging up on most of them and until you get somebody to pick up, or, creating 10 email domains and sending 800 spam emails a day per user? Can you get business that way? You can, yeah. But is that actually the right kind of client? Is that the kind of customer, the kind of client that's going to be there for the long haul, that's going to become a raving fan, that's going to pay you what you're worth? And in my experience so far, it usually isn't, right? You might get 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 100 of those types of customers that end up being a good fit that you actually really want to work with. But most of the rest of them end up being tire kickers. They're not in that type of client where you just go, how do we get more of those folks? So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit more about how to angle towards the people that you actually want to work with, not just getting as much business as you can.
A couple concepts that we can explore. First off is transactional versus relational sales. 40 years of business to business experience, which is where I come from. Yeah, I was in the printing area and the technology and office products space, those three industries primarily. And if you're looking for transactional sales, that approach that you were talking about is a potential good method to do so. But if you're building relationships, if you're building relational sales, that's not the right approach to. I mean, you can be, but you're not likely to be as successful as you would in building a referral network. Secondly, is the idea of long-term value. If a business is looking for the long-term value of that relationship as opposed to a short-term value, you're going to maximize that relationship. You're going to maximize the relationship you have with them, and you're going to attract others that are looking for a similar type of feel to their business.
Yeah, and I wanted to dig into that because you were talking about when you attract the right kind of people and you focus on attracting the right kind of people, then those people actually want to engage with you, and they engage with you online and offline. And what I found is that sometimes the people who are most excited about you are never going to buy. They might be working for a company that's way behind the times, and they're frustrated as all get out because they know their company's never going to buy from you and you're the ideal. But they might go tell their friends, hey, you should work with these guys. I wish I could, I can't do it. And if you're purely going after the transaction, you're not going to get a raving fan who's never going to buy from you. But that person might actually end up referring a bunch of customers to you without getting any commission, without it being some referral partnership. And if you don't focus on attracting the right people and delighting them, then you only get the transactional deal. And another thing with the transaction is if it doesn't happen, you don't get any value from it. So like if you cold call somebody and you work a deal for 6 months and they end up going with a competitor, all the time and effort and energy you put into that is going to be wasted, or primarily wasted. Whereas if you've built a relationship, you've delighted someone, even if they end up not moving forward with you, they could still end up referring people to you, even if they went to a competitor.
Absolutely. I can give you an example. There's a company called Arte-Flame, ARTE, Arte-Flame, California-based company that I met through the internet. They sell high-end patio grills. These are wood fire grills, high-end, $2,500 to $5,000. I'm probably not their best customer, but I was so impressed with their product, and I knew a number of builders, excuse me, that could potentially use that product. I was able to make some introductions on their behalf and further relationships on their behalf for no other reason than to put the right people together.
Yeah, that's something that I've really been leaning into also, is how do you find those, I call them super connectors. How do you find the people who have influence with your buyer? Maybe they would buy from you, maybe they won't ever buy from you, but they would be the kind of person who knows the right people for you to know and is willing to make an introduction just because they like connecting people. They like being the hub. And how can you find and engage those people and attract and delight them? And then they can end up giving you more customers. And then I've also found that a lot of times the people who are those super connectors, everybody is excited to meet each other when they've been brought together by somebody like that. And most of us know somebody who, if they reach out and they go, hey, Dave, you need to know Jimmy over here, you're going to take that call no matter what, even if you think it might not be a good fit, because it was this person that you respect who made the introduction.
Well, there's actually a group called Super Connectors. They meet monthly, excuse me, via Zoom. I've participated in that group for the last several months and have made wonderful connections. A woman named Hillary Spivak and Christopher Gidding started it. They're out of the Philadelphia, the eastern side of Pennsylvania, New Jersey connections. And I've made so many great relationships in just 6 or 8 months time through those super connectors. And you're absolutely right. There's a thriving desire to help others that comes from individuals like myself and yourself that are willing to do that.
Yeah, and I want to get into the flywheel, so we can talk about that next. But just kind of to wrap up this point that we're talking through, when you're focusing on the relationship and you're focusing on how do I add value and then how do I attract and really create an amazing experience for people, And then you're focusing on how do I build relationships, not just with buyers, but the people who influence my buyers, the people who make those connections. When you're focusing on those kinds of people, you end up getting pulled into networks of people who think the same way that you do. And you and I are both kind of now in the Go-Giver community and are starting to run in that circle. And so when you're meeting people or you go to an event of Go-Givers, everybody's like that, so that if you meet somebody and you make a connection, they're going to be thinking the same way and looking to add value in ways where, you don't necessarily get an immediate benefit from it. But then if you are focusing on the transactional side of things, you're going to find that you'll run into a lot more people who aren't like that at all. They're going to want a quid pro quo. If they make a recommendation or they refer somebody to you, they're going to immediately expect something in return from you, whether it's feasible or not. And so, the more that you do this and the more you find the right kinds of people, you're going to end up finding that your entire network is made of people who act like that, who want to build relationships for each other and help each other out.
Sure. Yeah. BNI groups tend to quantify that, and Go-Givers don't. They're glad to have made the relationship. I'll say Joe meet Bob, Bob meet Joe, kumbaya if you like. Excuse me, frog in there. And exit stage left. And that's where I think the relationship building, if you're in that kind of environment, I know full well that Bob and Joe are going to get together. And if they don't, there's a reason that they didn't get together. And that's okay. But if you're in a BNI group and I say, hey, Joe, you need to meet Bob, it's because I want the dollars and cents attached to my introduction. And that's, that's not beneficial to any of the three of us.
Yeah. And then I think it's given networking a bad name, because networking in the BNI version gets to really quickly feel transactional. It's like, okay, I'm building relationships for the purpose of the transaction only. Now, there's a fine balance here, because on the one side, put your sales hat on. If you end up building relationships and networking with a bunch of people who could never benefit your business, you're going to go out of business, right? So I think it's, partly picking the right group of people to network with, and then having open hands with each individual conversation, knowing that if you're having enough conversations with the right group of people who actually either need what you have or they know people who need what you have, when you approach those people in a giving first manner, that you're going to end up closing business even faster. But if you end up taking that Go-Giver approach, but you're not reaching the right people, you're going to end up giving a lot and not really getting anything in return, because those people could have never made an introduction or referral for you because they're just not in the right group of people, or that, they don't have the right contacts.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Joe. And again, I was having a chat back and forth with Bob Berg on that subject not too long ago. And the idea of a curious listener comes to mind, and we could certainly go down that path. But today, so many people want to tell their story, tell the benefits of their solution, tell the benefits of their company, tell the benefits of doing business with me as opposed to my competitors, as opposed to getting to learn about the person on the other side of the desk or the phone or the Zoom call. And unfortunately, that lends itself to the transactional conversation, where somebody says, nope, I'm not interested in what it is that you're offering. What else is there? Well, there's really nothing else. It's all about the transaction. Where if you're there as a curious listener to understand your business, if I understand your business correctly, now I can be of value by introducing somebody else or introducing another solution or something that might benefit you in the short term, while in the background knowing that maybe someday you're going to need my consultative services, or you're going to want to buy something that our company has to offer.
Absolutely. Chris here. This is a good, I'm going to pull this up on here. Got a comment from Chris. It goes right in line. So listen to understand, not to respond.
That's correct.
Yeah, right on, Chris. Totally agree with you there. So you talked about a flywheel, and we kind of got a little bit off track there. Because
Sure.
the relational versus transactional side of things, I think, is really important. And the most successful people who I've met take that more relational approach, and they end up succeeding in the long run. They're not burning out, and they also typically have more fulfilling lives outside of work as well. Because maybe your top sales performer at certain companies for a year or two or three, maybe they do take a more transactional approach. But look at that person's life over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and the relational people win out, in my experience, pretty
Mine
much
as
every
well.
time.
Yep.
Okay, so then you talked about a flywheel. What do you mean by a flywheel?
So the idea of a flywheel is the less effort you put into it, the faster your business grows. Multiples or exponential, doesn't matter. But the idea is that you're putting in less effort instead of more. When you, we're talking about the number of phone calls as an example. We'll use that 100 example, and throwing 100 phone calls out there and getting one response, and that one response not panning out. You got to go make another 100 phone calls to get that one response. So 1,000 phone calls get you 10 responses, and eventually those numbers come through. In a flywheel concept, when you're focused on those who are most interested in your solution or are a good fit, so to speak, your chances, number one, go up in your close ratio or your hit ratio. So that's the first and foremost in the top part of the circular funnel or circular flywheel. If you then are able to engage them, and I'll use a couple of examples as we go through it, but if you're engaging them and they've purchased one product and they come back, I talked okay today is not good. You don't want to be just okay. You want to be fantastic. You want to have a 5-star review of your book. My book, Echoes Across the Tracks, has all 5-star reviews at this point. And I want that high level of engagement because they're going to then tell others. And when they do tell others and others come back and say, oh, yeah, I had a good experience with Dave or with this company or with this Chamber of Commerce, then their mindset is solidified. Yes, I've made a good choice. Yes, I'm joining this organization or as a customer base, and it solidifies it. And now all of a sudden they're attracting other people to you or your organization, and that whole process spins faster than that outreach or that marketing or that. I mean, don't get me wrong. You need that marketing to reinforce your brand. You need the marketing to reinforce the story that you're telling. In large organizations, whether it's Dairy Queen or McDonald's or Outback Steakhouse, doesn't matter. Pick any national brand. You need to have that reinforcement. But if you go into the local restaurant and the delivery of that is not consistent, if it isn't solidified, isn't reinforced, you're not going to attract other people to that concept or that brand. And that's where the flywheel spins faster and faster and faster because you're touching people that you wouldn't otherwise touch. Again, an example, if you're advertising on a sports channel, call it ESPN or your local broadcast sports channel, and that's your target audience, that's who you're going to attract. But if your customer base comes from someplace else, and because they're in the social media platform, all of a sudden you're touching people that you wouldn't have otherwise touched. And now you got 2 marketplaces that you're hitting when you would have otherwise hit 1.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. That's kind of, I would say, the baseline of what I've been working on here with my business sell through social is exactly based on that, because most B2B marketing and sales that I've seen is either, brand like you're talking about, but then there's no way to measure the value of that brand, or it's extremely difficult. Marketers like to tell stories, so they can tell all kinds of interesting stories about how the brand is actually moving the business and all this stuff. And I don't totally disagree with it. But then you could spend $1 million on your marketing and not have any idea how much of an impact that had on your business.
Sure.
And then when you apply those same brand concepts to a small business, you're really screwing yourself over because they can't measure it and they're spending millions of dollars at bigger companies, but you're going to try to apply these same branding ideas to your small business. And you don't have the extra budget to spend. So it's like you focus on the things that you know for sure are going to drive business, but the more effort that you put into it, the more you're going to get a multiple return from that investment. So when you do something like cold calling and you call, and you're just calling over and over and over again, yes, you might close some business from that. It's possible, but whatever effort you put in, you're not getting more momentum from each step of that process. And same for paid ads or something like that. Like if you're running paid ads for your business, and I'm not saying cold calling or paid ads are necessarily wrong. There could be a place for them in certain aspects, but as soon as you stop putting money into your paid ads, your business development stops, your pipeline stops. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're doing more of what you're talking about, where you're engaging people, you're getting them delighted, they're becoming raving fans of your business, every single time that they're having an interaction, you're speeding up that flywheel. So if you're paid ads or you're cold calling or whatever it is that you're doing to get people in, if they don't get sucked into that flywheel, and so whether they buy from you right now or not, they're kind of keeping that momentum going, then you're going to end up being in trouble at a certain point because ads are going to get more expensive and you can't afford it, or they're not working as effectively, and now all of a sudden your business is tanked. So yeah, I totally agree on that flywheel concept.
And it applies to other parts of your business. If you're a business owner, and we'll use an example of employees, it's human resource and training and hiring is expensive today, right? So if you attract the right types of employees for your business, we'll use that as an easy example, and then you engage them by having them be a good employee. You provide them the right benefits, you provide them the right platform to succeed, to challenge themselves, all of those aspects of human resources side of things to where they're excited to come to work. They become so delighted in coming to work that they stick around. They don't go looking for another job. They don't go wandering the ads. They don't wonder whether or not they can make more someplace else. So they become so delighted that all of a sudden they attract others. They tell their friends, their family, hey, you want to work at my place because they treat you right. They give you a challenge. And all of a sudden now you've got a pool of potential employees for the future that you wouldn't have otherwise touched. And you've got a high customer satisfaction level, and you have reduced your human resources recruitment expenses and training expenses and all that goes with that. And this idea of growing your business through employees has a similar model.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, and I've seen the same thing. With it's a slightly different context, but with companies that enable and encourage their team to create a personal brand and be creating content, you kind of have these two different ways that businesses look at it. One is, hey, you work here. If you're going to post something, it needs to be about the company. It needs to be focused on what we're doing, and some companies even basically push or require you to do that. And if you don't, you're going to have a lot of friction in your employment. But then on the other side, there's companies that recognize the value and they go, hey, build your personal brand. It's good for you, but then also recognize that it's good for the company. And when I've seen companies embrace that idea of encouraging personal brands for their employees and maybe even supporting them by helping them do it, they end up getting better quality hiring pipeline. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I've seen come from it more than almost anything else is people go, wow, I want to work at a company with, this person over here who I've been seeing on LinkedIn consistently. They're showing up in my feed. I've been learning from them. I could work on their team. That would be awesome. So then you end up getting A players easier on your team. And at my previous company, we saw that happen. Most of our employees, our team came from connections that were built on personal brands of people on our team, both the owners and other people on the team. and the people that we got were awesome. Like we had some
Absolutely.
really amazing people working with us. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Oops, seems like there might have been a little
The
delay
idea
there.
of, yeah, you've got a little bit of a delay on your video feed. The idea of delighted customers or delighted employees, the idea of a net promoter score has been around for a long time. Net promoter scores are very common in large companies, and the idea of doing so on a small scale for smaller businesses has grown because the technology allows for the Google reviews, allows for the the customer to provide a really good experience review. Hotels have been doing it forever. Restaurants have been doing it forever. But the idea of all-consuming interest in delighting the customer, the pizza place that we go to on Friday nights, they don't assign a single waitress to a single table. And I love the model because when my drink needs to be refilled, the person who's walking past notices it. It doesn't have to be when my server comes to support my table. She just naturally says, "Can I, fill your Sprite?" Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. I don't care whether it's the blonde 18-year-old or the brunette 40-year-old that comes past my table to do so. I care that my drink is full and that I'm able to enjoy my pizza with that drink. They have nailed it from a customer service perspective. And not only do they have good pizza, but their service is good. So many organizations miss out on the fact that it has to be a total solution. If your product is awesome in a business-to-business environment, whatever that product is, it could be the greatest thing since sliced bread. But when you call the customer service team and you got to sit on hold for 20 minutes to get a simple question answered, your level of satisfaction is diminished. So having a full company approach to that aspect, can be the difference between the top-notch company and the company that's in the middle.
Yeah. So can you give me an example, and we could just kind of go through the flywheel of attract, delight, and engage. So can you give me an example of either a customer you've worked with or a company you've worked at where you implemented a flywheel, what that actually looked like in practice, and then the outcome?
Sure. Yeah, in the company that I last worked with, technology company, we were looking for companies that had 50 or more employees, and we were looking for 50 or more employees that had relatively high turnover in their staff or had high reporting requirements for the Affordability Act, the Obamacare Reporting Act. So we had a very narrow targeted client base. And so our marketing began with that effort. Those are our top clients. If a client called and we were able to screen them to 25 employees, we didn't spend any time at all with them. They weren't good customers for our software. But then what we found was that if we engaged them within 15 minutes of their organizations reach out to us, if in a phone call or in a web form, they reached out to us and we reached back within 15 minutes, we found that they were 75% more likely not to call our competitor. And so we eliminated the opportunity for them to call our competitor and compare because they got a quick response. So many companies today miss out on responsiveness, and we'll get around to it eventually. We're taking care of these customers, so we'll eventually get around to that. We put that on steroids and said, hey, if a customer reaches out to us, we're going to drop those outbound phone calls that we're making. Yeah, that I said I was going to make 10 phone calls in the next 4 hours before lunch. We stopped that and said, no, we have to take this phone call, or we need to return that phone call from a web inquiry. And what we found was that they weren't calling a competitor. And because they weren't calling a competitor, they were getting the answers from our sales team. We did the same thing on the customer service side. Once they became a customer, we didn't have them sitting on hold waiting for a customer service person. They got right through directly. In many cases, they got a direct line. And if somebody wasn't there, they got patched through to the next person. It was a cultural thing. And again, the result was we had delighted customers with high satisfaction that ended up contacting us and saying, hey, one of our suppliers or one of our vendors could use your solution as well. We've had such a good experience with you. And that attracted more people our direction.
Yeah, that's killer, man. That's solid. Seeing that go all the way through from beginning to end. I really like that point on responsiveness, and it reminds me of a really negative experience that I had. And it's exactly to your point. Like when somebody's on your website and they fill out a form, most of the time they've already been doing research. They already know an idea of what they're looking for, and they want to talk to a sales rep because they don't want to have to go try to figure all of that stuff out on their own past that point, or there's some very specific thing that they're looking for. So another thing is that when you talk to them, actually read what they said and actually listen to what they're telling you and give them what they're asking for, not whatever your predetermined script is or whatever your predetermined demo is. You know, you gotta like actually listen and give them what they want. But I was working with a client, it's probably 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and they had to reach this very specific type of doctor within hospitals. And they wanted to work with a data provider to get email addresses and everything like that from this very specific, for this very specific type of person. So I reached out to probably like 10 of these data companies. Not a single one got back to me in the first 24 hours. And there were other ones that literally responded to me a week or two later. And I'm like, we've already made a decision. We've already met with all the people. You're not even on the table. And maybe they were the best option, but they didn't respond back for well over a week. And I think one of them didn't respond back for 2 weeks. And so, if you're going to have a form on your website for people to reach out, you need to be responsive, like you're saying, because whoever was calling me back, I was going to be setting a call with them. And then if it was right, I was going to set a call immediately with all the decision makers on that project, and we wanted to move quick. So yeah, totally agree with you on that one too. Yeah, it seems like don't normally have a delay on StreamYard, but it seems like we've got a little bit of a delay going on.
You do. It's significant on your end. I haven't seen an issue on mine, but if you're
yeah, it seems like we're having an issue there. So, yeah,
the idea of responsive, the idea of responsiveness, Joe, today gets missed. Some of it is generational because we've put 18 to 25-year-olds in charge of business and not necessarily trained them up in what that means, or it's not as important to them. The cleanliness of a retail location. Has always been said, if you got time to lean, you got time to clean. If you got, you're wasting time sitting doing nothing, you can wipe tables down or sweep the floor. People are challenged today with staffing, and because they have fewer employees, they're hustling around to just wait on the table. So the tables might not be as clean, and because they're not as clean, when I walk into that restaurant, I scratch my head and go, wonder what kind of service this is going to be. They haven't been able to bust their tables. Or if the litter on the outside of the parking lot hasn't been cleaned because they don't have enough staff to do so. where's the attention being given to the front facing the restaurant parking lot or the retail parking lot. In our Chamber of Commerce, we give out what's called a Snazzy Award. The Snazzy Award goes to organizations and companies that do a really good job of keeping their storefronts or the retail locations looking nice. It could be an added flower bed or attractiveness. And the idea is not to penalize those that don't, but to encourage those that do. And when you get a Snazzy Award and you get social media posts and you get a physical sign in your yard, the business to the left and to the right, or their customers or their vendors who come see them, recognize that and hopefully raises the level of C, so to speak, SEA, and that those other businesses that may not be doing as good a job go, well, I've got to keep up with the Joneses. I've got to keep up with we got to do a better job on ours, and maybe we'll get a Snazzy Award. The idea of hiring correctly today goes to the leadership of that organization, training up their staff in that mindset.
So what are some practical steps that somebody listening can take to create a flywheel in their business? If they're wanting to attract, delight, and engage customers, what's something that they could do tomorrow that's going to help them begin to create that flywheel?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with an exercise, whether that's the leadership team or even the entrepreneur, who says, who is it that we're not going to service? Who are the poorest clients that we are going to push aside so that we do service the ones that we do want? There's a term called opportunity cost and opportunity lost. And in those ways, if you're spending an inordinate amount of time serving those that really aren't a good fit, eliminate that, drop that aspect, and now focus on those clients. That's a pretty practical exercise that wouldn't take very long to identify the characteristics of your best customer. And then consider a couple of ways. You don't have to create a lot of engagement, but find a couple of ways that you found in the past to engage those customers. What's worked for you in the past? Do you remember a sales contest that ran that benefited your customer? Was there something about that specific time period that you did something different that engaged them more? Because oftentimes we do try a good idea and we go, oh yeah, that was great, but then don't keep it up. And we abandon it for something fresh or something new. Oh, let's put our money into social media or social media ads when nobody's coming through that means. And then be intentional about requesting referrals. If you're happy at the end of the dinner meal and your server says something as simple, Joe, as, did you enjoy your meal tonight? Oh, it was great. It was a great experience. The service was wonderful. Well, terrific. Please tell your friends and family to stop into Dewey's Pizza. We'd really appreciate that. And the customer goes, what? We got an 18-year-old young lady who's asked us to tell our friends and family. Well, that's outside the box thinking. That's high level stuff. And they'll go, wow, that's the leadership. That's the management training somebody to be professional at a serving table, as opposed to just simply have a good night. Here's your bill. Thanks for coming. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Is it every Friday? It seems like every Friday we see you come in. Oh yeah, well, that's Dewey's is our place on Friday night. Well, that's great. We'll see you next Friday night. We'll look forward to seeing you. And maybe they'll make a note in their mentally to say hi to Dave and Patty when they come in on Friday night for their pizza. Those are little things, Joe, that don't take a lot of effort. And they can be applied to large business to business environments, if you're selling system sales or you're selling in a long-term solution environment, or something that's as simple and transactional as a meal in your restaurant, because you want them to come back. You don't want them to just buy one pizza. You want them to buy pizza one time, 52 times a year, and tell 10 other people that are going to have a good experience.
Yeah, and focusing your marketing and your messaging on the people who are going to come 52 times and recommend 10 of their friends, not on the people who are going to come once and leave a 1-star review. Focus a lot less attention on those 1-star review folks. So you sent me a copy of your book. Excited to read it. Tell me just like a quick summary of the book and where people can find out more, or where they can find your book.
Sure.
Echoes from the
Echoes Across the Track. Yeah, Echoes Across the Tracks is a lifelong journey that takes place over 30 hours on a train from New Orleans to Chicago. Its main character, Charlie, has his flight canceled from New Orleans to Chicago, and his cab driver suggests that he take the train instead. And unlike people today who are trying to rush to get to the next place, Charlie says, okay, yeah, take me to the train station. And the subtitle of the book is Life Lessons Through Unexpected Connections. Well, he makes a lot of connections between New Orleans and Chicago on that 30-hour journey. And there's a lot of wonderful stories that come from 40 years of business and 60 years of life that I've been able to share with others. And some of them are business and practical from a business and entrepreneurial background. Some of them are life lessons, and some of them just find their way through the train story. So it's different than most business books in that it doesn't have a prescribed 3 things that you have to do at the end of each chapter. It's written in a fictionalized story environment, and my hope is that it will catch on for commuters that are looking for a read on the train to and from the city. So we'll see, Joe.
I love it. And you can find his Dave's book on Amazon, and so go get a copy and leave him a 5-star review. So yeah, Dave, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm excited to meet you in person next week.
That sounds great, Joe. Thanks so much for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity.